Welcome to another day in paradise, and welcome to the answer to your question: how much should I budget for my winter wonderland experience in Norway? If you plan to go there this winter season, then this video is for you, because I'm going to tell you how much we as a couple spent in 7 days for a whole bunch of activities and experiences, so that you have a better and more exact planning phase for your budget and to save money from now on until you start, because it is quite budgety. And in the end, I'm going to break it down on how much we spent in total, and then how much we spent per person, and break that down to the cost per person per day to make it comparable to other countries, even though the experience is way different from everything else that I had in this channel so far. And to get to that point, we have this whole bunch of different categories over here, and I'm going to divide those even further down. We are going to start with the transportation category, but as always, I'm going to exclude the flights because they differ a lot depending on where you're coming from, which time of year you're flying, and stuff like that. But I'm going to tell you, we paid $614 for the flights from Germany, so it's not that far. It's quite easy to get there. But yeah, like I said, that's going to differ, so that's why I'm going to exclude them from the total prices. On the go, we decided to get a rental car, even though we weren't sure about that early on. So the rental car was only for 3 of the 7 days, and that came down to $334.26. And also we had to fill up on gas, obviously, and that was $84.23. So yeah, that sounds quite expensive, but you have to keep in mind we have done some distance. So if you haven't seen the vlog videos, it was a road trip all the way over to Finland. So yeah, that gets pricey on the gas, obviously. And as that was only for the last 3 days, the first days we had to get around somehow, and therefore we got some bus tickets, and that were day passes. So it was 3 days and 2 people, so it was 6 day passes in total. That was $71.02 roughly, with conversion rates and stuff like that coming into play. It is a more even number if you pay in dollars directly. But yeah, that's something you have to keep in mind depending on where you're going and if you do tours, because that was for the 7th day. We booked a tour and there was transportation included, so we were picked up in Tromsø, got to the experience, and then came back to Tromsø, so we didn't have to pay for that on that day. And if we sum all those prices up, we are going to end up on $489.51 for the transportation category. Next up is the accommodation, and there we had 1 night in 1 accommodation. Then we did the Lavu experience, where we slept in a tent, and that was the experience that we paid for. That's going to come later on. And then it was 5 nights left, so it was 2 accommodations with a total of $784.94, which makes it roughly $130 per night, which is quite expensive already, and it always depends on what you choose. Both times we chose Airbnb. If you haven't by any chance used Airbnb yet, there's going to be a link down there. If you use that, I'm going to get some affiliation stuff from that, so that will help me out a lot. So thank you if you do so. If not, that's totally fine as well. And yeah, therefore we stayed with families in a shared home, but we had our own bathroom and a room for ourselves, and the kitchen was shared, and that was totally fine. To be exact, it was a really cool experience to stay with them, but I'm going to tell you about that in the next video. For the food category, there's something special this time. We spent $102.78 cents in restaurants. We went in 3 different ones. We tried to avoid that as good as possible, but on the other hand, we also said, okay, let's treat ourselves with a little sweet and a little nice burgers, and then we had a couple of hours to spend, and there we had food and hot chocolate and stuff like that. So yeah, it is quite expensive to go out, but supermarkets isn't that cheap either. We spent $68.78 over there, and now you might think, but in total that's totally fine for a week. But we kind of geared up in Germany already and spent a total of $58.09 on groceries over here, and took them over to Norway because we knew it is going to be quite expensive over there, and I wasn't sure about how easy it will be to get vegan supplements and stuff like that, so I brought them with me. But therefore the food comes down to $229.65, and we cooked for ourselves most of the time, even though the price is still quite high for 1 week. And that brings us to, like almost always, the killer category, the activities. I don't want to miss out on anything, so I'm quite willing to spend $1 or $2 or $3 on that, even though I go budget on food and oftentimes on accommodations as well. Activities is something I'm very willingly spending money on, but to look at the numbers afterwards, sometimes it's kind of hard. It is quite expensive. I'm going to put the price down here because I try to forget it because it hurts, but eventually I'm going to forget it, but I'm not going to forget that experience because it was so awesome. It was so much fun, and money is going and coming and going back and forth again. So I'm quite all right with that. Keep that in mind if you hear these numbers now, because whoa, they are quite high, and I'm almost a little bit embarrassed to tell them. So the Lavu experience I talked about earlier, spending 1 night in this glass rooftop tent, which was an absolute bucket list point of mine for so many years, and now I was able to experience it. And on top we went snowshoeing on the same activity. We went with a ferry over a fjord, which was really cool. So there was a lot packed into this one activity, but it was $637.56 for the both of us, so that hurt. On the other hand, I was like, yeah, we are going to save 1 night, and like I said, 1 night is about $130, so that's cheap, that's all right. I can spend that. Looking back on those numbers, ouchie. The cable car ride up to the Fjellheisen mountain, which was only $62.23 because we walked up and then drove down back with the cable car. But if you have in mind that this cable car ride is like 3 minutes maybe, well, that's a whole lot of money for that little bit. But yeah, we were not able to walk down again, especially in the dark. That would not have been smart, that would not have been safe. So yeah, I'm glad we spent that money, but still it hurts a little. Another experience I'm absolutely gladly spent money on was our bar and mini golf experience. So there was both combined in one evening in one bar in one place. There also was table tennis, which was really cool, and we spent $35.23 for 2 drinks and yeah, as many rounds of mini golf that you wanted. We did cool with that. And the next one I am so gladly paid a lot of money for, and that is the earlier mentioned dog sledding, which was $470.45. Makes it $235 per person for like an hour or 90 minutes on the dog sled. and then puppies, and then some food. Whew, that is quite a sum for this short amount of time, but yeah, it was so fun. It was a blast, and like the Lavu experience, that was up the bucket list quite high, especially for this part of the world, because you can't do that everywhere and not in every season. So it was okay, either now or never. Let's do it. Don't think about the price tag too much and just go for it. And that we did. And therefore, the category of activities came down to $1,205.47. Glad I didn't hear that. That's a lot of money. Normally you can do 7 days of vacation for that amount of money easily, but we only spend it on activities. And then there is the rest category, which I didn't fill up completely this time because there was stuff. I only included ski pants, like something to wear underneath your pants so it keeps you warm, the spikes or crampons, and the gloves, and that is $50 in total. There was more stuff like that, like I bought new beanie and a new scarf and stuff like that, but that is more like everyday stuff, and these 3 things are more like I bought them for this trip and not necessarily going to wear them frequently or ever again, maybe. I don't know if the crampons come into play somewhere sometime. So yeah, that's why I included those but excluded some others. And with that being said, it's time for the drum roll and the big reveal that you all waited for the whole time. Before that, make sure to hit the like button for all these math stuff. I love math, so it wasn't too hard, but I like a like as well, so maybe leave it there for, and subscribe to the channel because, like I said, next time it's going to be very, very informative as well, and there's going to be a lot of questions answered and a lot to learn about how to plan your trip and what to keep in mind for different experiences, for example, and maybe where to book them, and especially a lot of information about the Aurora Borealis, the Northern Lights, and that is one of the reasons to go over there, obviously, so you don't want to miss out on that. So subscribe so that you don't, and maybe hit the bell as well, then you can be pretty sure to be part of that. And now, like I said, drum roll, it was $2,709.57 without the flights in total, which brings it down to $1,354.79 per person. Doesn't sound too bad. On the other hand, that is for 1 week of vacation. Dividing this amount by 7 brings us to the amount per day per person, which is $193.54. Whew, there's only one country worse, more expensive, which is Hawaii. And we all know that Hawaii is really expensive, so therefore obviously Norway is really expensive as well. I think for my wallet, for my budget, it is quite necessary to do a more budget-friendly country next, and therefore there are mainly some, like 2 or 3 regions in the world that I would suggest first. If you want to have a guess, or maybe you want to tell something, put it down in the comments. I'm really curious what your guess will be. But before that, we are going to switch up times a little, because the following videos after the last one about Norway with all the information are going to be older videos from last year. And there I visited Austria and 1 or 2 other countries, so there's going to be a series about that. And while those are going online, Kim and I, we are going to travel and those videos are going to come after that. And if you want to be part of that, then make sure to hit my Instagram as well, because there from time to time I'm going to ask you for suggestions. Like I had the question, name a random object that I should take to this mysterious place and what to do with it. So you can be part of writing my bucket list or our bucket list for the next trips by joining in on Instagram. And also I'm going to be more active, or try to be more active, on TikTok as well. Here are the handles that you can find us on, and I am really looking forward to see you over there and to see you in the next video. Until then, have a good one. See you somewhere, sometime, somehow.